Palestine36, an award-winning film by Annemarie Jacir.
Why Palestine in 1936?
1936 sets up this entire stage for what's coming in 12 years.
In your research, what did you discover that would surprise most people?
How cruel the British occupation was. Everything that the Israeli army does today, nothing even original about it. All of the collective punishment, blowing up houses, human shields, tying people to cars, even the wall, all of that was already set up and in place at the time of the British.
Annemarie Jacir is one of the most powerful voices in Palestinian cinema. In Palestine36, she takes us back to the 1936 Arab revolt and shows us Palestine that many of us have never seen before.
What I hope is that Palestinians will watch the film and see themselves. To know where we are now is to know where we've come from.
This is an episode about Palestinian excellence.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on my first podcast.
First podcast. What an absolute honor for Yalla Stock to be your first podcast interview. How is it like being here in Toronto?
It's great. It's great being back in Toronto. I've been here a number of times, but I have to say this time feels different than any other time. It was the most incredible reception. And every time I come to Toronto, I look for my community. I look for my people. And this time I really found it.
You found your people.
Yeah.
You found the people, the support, the love, rightfully so. What you did with Palestine 1936 and every film before that is truly remarkable. And I just want to start by saying I truly and genuinely admire everything you're doing and everything you stand for.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be with you.
Likewise. And I wanted to start this interview with asking the first question, which is, why Palestine in 1936? What inspired this film to be in that specific period of time?
Palestine 1936 is an incredible moment in our history. The year 1936, arguably the longest and largest uprising against British colonial rule. It came from Palestinian farmers, al-Fallahin, and it was an incredible moment that I think very little is known about it in a sort of mainstream sense, but it's a moment of our history that is so detailed and incredible and critical, and it's 12 years before the Nakba. We often start the conversation with the Nakba in 1948, and 1936 sets up this entire stage for what's coming in 12 years. The loss of Palestine, all of that. So I was very interested in I started the exploration of this period, and reading and doing all that research, and I was amazed by so many things about the period that I started developing a story around it.
That's incredible, because you're right. A lot of us, including us Palestinians, we start the conversation around 1948. What you're saying, and based on the movie, is that it started way before 1948. It started in the 1930s, where there was that British colonialism, where there were these revolts, and where we are seeing exactly what you just said right now, the foundation of what happened.
Yeah, the foundation, and even before that. I mean, we could go. I mean, it's even before that. But I start this story in 36. But you could actually even argue that there was an uprising in 1890s. There was. I mean, we have it in our blood. We have been a people fighting for freedom and independence for a really long time.
That's it's in our blood. The resilience, and I truly and genuinely believe this. It's like in one of the scenes. It's even if it's not us, our children will continue fighting until Palestine is free. I'm curious, Annemarie, in your research about the 1930s, what did you discover that would surprise most people?
Well, that's an interesting question, because there was so much to discover that surprised me. One thing was how cruel the British occupation was. All occupations are, but everything that the Israeli army does today, there's nothing even original about it. There's nothing original. It's all of the collective punishment, blowing up houses, human shields, tying people to cars, even the wall, building a wall. I was amazed. All of that was already set up and in place at the time of the British. So that was one thing that surprised me. The other thing that surprised me, not surprising, but I was very interested in, it's definitely not a surprise, but the class struggle of Palestinians and the difference between the two classes, upper class and the farmer class, working class in Palestine, and how that the British they knew how to play the game of the upper class. They were, the movement in the upper class. They were fighting for independence. They were going to conferences in London. They were talking about, our independence, and the British knew how to play that game very well because it was their own game and it was happening in their own language. But they couldn't control the countryside. They couldn't control our countryside, and they didn't know how to deal with it. And at some point, there was a moment where the revolt was almost successful. And I found that I was very interested in that. And then they took it up to a whole other level, the British, and they completely crushed it. And they brought in more tanks and more troops and more weapons, and because they lost control, and they ended up crushing it. And so when Nakba comes 12 years later, we were already weak. The leadership had already been exiled. We were already, there were something called the Village Files, for example. You know about the Village Files?
No, tell us a little bit more about the Village Files.
The Village Files were reports about all the villages in Palestine, who lived in the village, prominent families in the village, what were they doing, and young people or intellectuals who were anti-authoritarian, who were possibly troublemakers. They had files on everything.
So there was surveillance even back then.
Yeah.
And they knew everything about the Palestinians and about every single person.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So a few things you mentioned. You mentioned that in the 1930s, there were these revolts. You mentioned that it was almost successful. And then the British basically backed up and brought more tanks to crush the revolts. You also mentioned the different class systems. And to me, I thought that was very interesting in the film because we always, coming from being Palestinians ourselves, we hear a lot about Fallahi culture. And I myself come from a lineage of Fallahis. But rarely do we hear about the aristocrats and the higher class of Palestinians. And you show that in the film. In 1936, you show that there were villagers, the Fallahis, alongside the aristocrats. By showing these two different classes, if you can send one message, or if you wanted to send one message to the world about the contrast of these, what would it be?
I don't think I have a message about it, but I wanted to show not only, the Fallahin and the upper class, but also the working class at the port. The port workers were really critical in unionizing, and, and there's something that was the whole modern side of what was happening in a way. Young, mostly men, were leaving their villages and coming to work on the port. And that's something for our culture was new at the time. You grow up and you live in the village you were born in, and you live there and you get married there, and and there started this movement where people came to Jaffa to work from other villages so that they could support their families. And then the character of Yusuf in the film, who's going between, he was the link between the village and the city, and he's going back and forth because he also believes that, maybe there is a place for him. He has a lot of hope that he could, pull himself up, as they say, and become part of this world that he really admires. But history has other plans.
History has other plans, unfortunately. And thank you for clarifying that, because you're right. There was the village farmers, there was the aristocrats, and there was also the laborers. And we see in the film the sense of injustice and even unionization are being formed. And I wanted to just now jump into asking more about the production of the film, because I know that this film took you 8 years to get out there in the world. And I wanted to first ask, how has the film changed from what you imagined 8 years ago to what it is today?
That's a really good question because it changed. It changed a lot. It took so long to write the film, to finance the film, and then to shoot the film. We had to stop and start 4 times. So a lot of things changed, but also because of the genocide, things changed. I have to say, I think it was important for me to stay connected to what was happening around me. I had worked so hard on this script for so many years. But with what was happening around me emotionally, and I'm still, affected by that, we're all, completely shattered. Parts of us have been shattered. But we can pick ourselves up. We continue to do what we know how to do. Actors continue to do their work. We do our work. Everybody does their work. But I would say the script probably had a lighter tone before. If you read the script, there was a lightness to it. Not a lot. I mean, still, the story is the story, but there was a lighter moment. There were lighter moments in it. And also, I guess, there was a playfulness in it. I was playing with time. I was jumping back and forth in chronology. The script is a very, different thing. And then when I started editing, I wanted to plug more into the emotion of the story and the characters and sort of remove myself as the writer or the director behind it. I wanted to be really more plugged in with these group of characters. So it changed.
Wow. So originally you had a vision for it to be a little lighter, but given what was happening, and I think the characters and what you and the cast have done was such a brilliant job, because I don't think anyone who has watched the film didn't feel all these different emotions coming from different characters, the sense of injustice, the sense of pain and grief. So well done.
Thank you.
And I wanted to follow up with that, is that from my understanding, the production pre-production was in January 2023, and then you were set to shoot in October 13th, 2023. October 7th happened. So less than a week before you were set to film,
Yeah.
The war broke out, the genocide started happening. How did these events change the direction of the film? And what was going through your mind when this was happening?
I mean, very quickly, it became obvious that things were going to be very dark. I mean, even when, October 7th, we had to evacuate the team. The foreign team was evacuated. The local team, like Yusuf, for example, who plays, Karim, who plays the character of Yusuf in the film, is from Kalkilia. We were in Bethlehem. The local cast and crew couldn't even get back to their homes because the whole West Bank went into lockdown. The army was everywhere. They were arresting people. I mean, it was a really, hard time. And we didn't know what was going to happen. We knew one thing. I kept saying that, let's just wait. We've been through this before. We have made films during war before. We have been, we've been dealing with occupation and all this violence all our lives. It's not the first time. So we find our ways around it, and we find our ways to continue doing it. But I don't think we had any idea that it was going to be, here we are more than 2 years later. And no, I did not expect it to be like this. And so we kept saying, we'll wait. And the whole film was supposed to be shot in Palestine. Our locations were no longer accessible. We couldn't continue. So I was getting proposals to shoot the film in other countries, including Jordan, but also Greece, Malta, Cyprus. And I was like, I will not. It felt like suddenly it became a thing with me that I was like, I'm not going to be a refugee film. We're going to do this film here. It's important. The whole team has been working here, and it's a film so much about our land. We have to do it here. That became more and more impossible, especially like the village, for example. The village where we were originally supposed to shoot is now, taken over by settlers. It wouldn't have been safe to put even, cast on the ground there. we were welcomed in Jordan. We've shot in Jordan a lot. Jordan has always been a place for us. So we ended up doing a lot of scenes in Jordan, and it saved us. But I kept, for the rest of it, to finish the film, I kept saying, we've got to get back. We have to get back. And eventually we did. In November 2023, we managed to come back and finish the film in Palestine. And it's, I think emotionally for us, it was a triumph, but it was also, it's bittersweet. And everything, even when we were shooting the scenes in Jordan, not just the cast, but also the extras, everybody, we were, acting out scenes of violence or scenes of, this world that was so 1930s, and yet it feels completely relevant. It's right now.
Even though it's been 1930s, it's still happening today. We're still seeing the effects of colonialism and oppression that is daunting Palestinians.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, I loved how you were so determined and adamant to keep it in Palestine, and you didn't want it to be a refuge film. And it warms my heart to know that most of the film was still shot in Palestine, and you were able to go back to keeping it authentic.
I don't know, not most.
Or I should say, at least a significant amount.
A significant amount.
Given especially what was happening, I can definitely appreciate that it is a win, because you have to balance between the safety of the cast and so many different interests, and also keeping it authentic.
This podcast episode is sponsored by Sucker, or Sukkar in Arabic, an electrolyte sugar-free lollipop made with natural ingredients. Yalla, stay hydrated with Sucker lollipops. Perfect for post-gym workouts, raves, or if you have a sweet tooth and want something guilt-free.
This is only 20 calories and no added sugars.
This is actually very yummy.
Get your Suckers on sucker.world and you can use the code YALLA, Y-A-L-L-A. Yalla, let's stay hydrated.
Earlier today, you mentioned you were talking about the props. Tell us a little bit more about the props you used. How were you able to source them? 'Cause I thought that was very fascinating.
Yeah, all of the preparation for the film, which was, the 10 months when we were originally supposed to shoot, it's very important to say that I had a Palestinian costume designer, a Palestinian production designer, Palestinian props master, all of these elements, because they were obsessed as I am with the period, that everything has to be correct. We work in fiction, we have the freedom of fiction, but everything has to be, correct. This rug on the ground, like this, the curtain, this, like, what did we look like? What did we dress like? What did our homes look like? So I have to give a lot of credit to my team, and we worked obsessively and crazy about all of that stuff. And they didn't have to learn that. I mean, they are, they did their research, but they are Palestinians, and that, I think, that voice is there. That side of it is super critical. The props came from all over the place. The typewriter that Khaloud has, we were, looking for a 1930s. I found some 1940s typewriters. I said, no, I don't want 1940s. We need 1930s. Things changed, and things changed a lot after World War II. Vehicles changed, like a lot of things. There was a big, change in the way things looked. So, I wanted to be true to that. We found the typewriter in Beirut finally, and we brought it from Beirut to Jordan, and then crossed the bridge with it, brought it to Palestine, and then we had to bring it back to Jordan, and then we had to bring it back
Talk
to
about
Palestine.
a mission for a typewriter.
Yeah, it was. And other things too, the Ottoman pistol, like all of these, they're all these items that had their own journeys, I can say.
I love that. And as someone who's watched the film, you can see how authentic and the details, and from my understanding, you also built some of the vehicles and the weapons that were in the 1930s as well.
Yeah. We had an ironsmith in Nablus building those vehicles, because they also don't, after World War II, military vehicles changed a lot, and you can kind of find some of those, but before, no. So we built all of that stuff, and we lost all of that stuff because when we had to leave Palestine, we had to start all over again in Jordan, so we had to rebuild everything in Jordan. Then we came back to Palestine, and we got, there's a British vehicle in the film that is we brought to Jerusalem. I don't know how we managed to do this, but we brought that thing into Jerusalem, and now it's in the Palestine Museum outside of Ramallah. Because it's a story. The whole film is a story.
The whole film is a story. I love that. And I want to go back to right now after October 7th. Did you find that there were challenges even releasing the film?
Yeah, I mean, I think after October 7th, look, artists were silenced and continue to be silenced all over the place, especially Palestinian artists and Palestinian voices. I think all of us have had shows canceled, films canceled, banned. Wajib, was banned in Germany, like taken off the air in Germany, which is about a father and son delivering wedding invitations. And the reason they said was that it's not the time for Palestinian stories. We were working in that kind of condition, and we continue to work in that condition. It's why Palestinian voices are so important to center. There's a lot of international solidarity now around Palestine, and people definitely are different than their governments. But I think we have to. It's still this blackout of our own stories and voices. I think, and shadow banning and all of this stuff. It's real, and it's strong.
I 100% agree. I think international solidarity and allyship is key in the movement. At the same time, we really do need to start centering more Palestinian voices, because we are the voices that is going to bring us the change. And as you mentioned, there's already so much shadow banning, and there's so many obstacles for Palestinian artists and creatives to tell their stories. So we need to start amplifying as much as we can. As a follow-up to that is, how did you overcome this? How did you overcome these challenges?
Well, I'm only at the beginning with this film. So, it's been a struggle though for forever since we began. There are, it's not new. It's not, since October 7th, it's before October 7th. It's, it's been all our lives. And we have to find our allies, like you said. We have to insist that we, just keep doing what we know how to do, but finding the support, and breaking into things. I think it's about not thinking about the mainstream, or that these are the spaces that are going to save us. I think historically they've never been, and we should never rely on them. So yeah, I think being at Toronto has really been. It's been, I can't say enough how that screening, what it meant to the team, because it's our first audience. We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how people were going to react. You never know until the film is in front of the audience, because Cameron Bailey had said it's really an audience film. And I was like, okay, hopefully it's an audience film. But I don't really actually know that, because I've never had an audience watch it before. So
that's truly remarkable. And I was there in the screening, and I think not one person didn't want to say Free Palestine. And we see it. There was a round of applause that went, I believe, for like standing ovation for 15 to 20 minutes. And I think it could have went even longer had they not said like, okay, we need to ask them questions. And everyone in that audience felt that Free Palestine movement. So thank you very much for inspiring that. And I do agree. If there's a door that closes, there's a million doors that open. Just because something might not necessarily, the mainstream will open that door, it doesn't mean aren't there doors that you can't go through.
Yeah.
And what is mainstream anyways?
And what is mainstream? But they say Palestinians were like, I think Hani Abbas had said this, Palestinian filmmaker, we're like ants, right? Like you put a block here, we'll go this way. You put a block here, we'll go this way. You could never block the ants.
You can never block. We'll find a way. That's the resilience in our blood.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask more about, again, the 1930s, because you mentioned that this is a fiction film. And I wanted to just ask, were there any real stories that inspired or you incorporated in the film?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of real stories. There are characters in the film that are, inspired by the actual characters, and they have their names. Wingate, the general, is based on Ord Wingate, who was he's sort of seen as the godfather of the Israeli army, let's just say. He wasn't even Jewish. He was an evangelist, sort of Christian, who felt like he was on some kind of mission in the Holy Land, and he was, an expert of guerrilla warfare, and he introduced a lot of really unorthodox tactics, and he was very proud of them. So there's a character. He's in the film. The High Commissioner Walkup that Jeremy Irons plays also. So those are the real characters. Thomas, the secretary, was based on and the secretary to the High Commissioners, a figure that I'd read. He'd written a bunch of diaries about his time in Palestine. He really came there feeling that he was doing something positive that was helping the local community. And as time went by, he really saw he became very disillusioned, and eventually quit. Khulud's character is a mix of sort of two different women, a female journalist who was an important figure, and a socialite, this woman who was having parties in Jerusalem and mixing with the British, and a sort of combination of that. Her husband Emir, also people who had aspirations to be mayor, to be something, and it meant maybe compromising sometimes your own beliefs to get what you want. So all of these are based on actual people, but it's all fictionalized.
Which makes sense. So there's a lot of history and truth into the characters, but at the same time, as a storyteller and as a director, it would be close to impossible to find Khulud's character, like word by word, what she was going to say at that period of time. And I think what makes film and cinema so beautiful is that you take these real stories, these real people, and you create another story of what it would have been like in the 1930s.
Yeah. And like Afra doesn't exist. Afra's in imagination. Right? Yusuf is in the imagination. Yusuf is sort of something for me, like personal, like my father, Yusuf, who was born in 1936. There's all of that, but also the historical events are all real in the film.
Real.
And that's important to say. Of course, it's my interpretation of them, but they're all the Peel Commission, what is said on the radio, all of that stuff is word by word real. It's all real. And it's all fiction.
And it's real and it's fiction. The history, the facts, it's all historical.
Yeah.
The storytelling, there could be a little bit of fiction in there. Something you just mentioned, you showed real footage of the revolts in 1936. Based on your research and just speaking to historians, what shocked you the most about British colonization of Palestine?
The archival images were incredible to start to discover. It was like a thing where I started seeing a few, and then it was more and more. And I had an archive producer on the film. Her job was to find and show me these archives, and then I had to choose from them, and then we had to clear them, etc. But I was amazed that the British filmed everything. They filmed, farmers, picking olives to the British Army blowing up a house. They filmed it all. His archives are incredible because everything is there, and so you really see the whole world. This whole film could have been done in archive, actually, in some ways. I mean, everything is there, and so that was, for me, the archives were always an important part of the story. They were in the script. I'd written archive into the script that we would go to archive every now and then. But I wanted it to see that it was archive. The ratio of the screen changes whenever we have the archive footage on screen, for example. So it's archived, but it's very integrated into it. And I think it really, because the story is not about one village, Al Basma. It's about all our villages. It's not about, it's about all of these things. So I thought the archives really helped to show that entire world, that lost world. Those places don't exist anymore, or they do exist in such a different way. But to see like all the hopefulness in it, there was a lot of possibility. People walking down the street, nobody knows in 12 years, that where are all those people in the archives? I look at the archives and I think, what happened to that little girl that's skipping down the road here? In 12 years is the Nakba. What happened to this person? What happened to that shop owner right there? That entire world is about to be wiped out. And we know that now because we watched the film today. But I always wonder, I hope, screening this film, I hope that somebody recognizes their grandfather, their grandmother, or somebody in the archives. It would be amazing.
That would be epic. It's and I'm happy you mentioned that, because having the archives, it shows and solidifies the history, because there is this rhetoric and this narrative that's always that, the Zionists have come into a land where there's no people.
Right.
I think that's I can't remember the exact quote, but
a land for whatever it is, who cares?
yeah, I know, it's like,
Yeah.
but it's just a whole narrative that, they just came and there was no one there.
Yeah.
And what I love about Palestine 36, it really does challenge that narrative, and it shows it with facts and it shows it with archives. And you mentioned that how easy it was for your team to find those archives because they exist. So whenever someone puts forward that argument, they're really just intentionally and deliberately trying to erase our identity and our history. So thank you for bringing back our history.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
If there's nobody there, there's no land for people. If there's no people there, why are thousands and thousands of troops being brought in to crush something? Who are they fighting if there's nobody there?
Yeah, they could have just easily came in and that's it.
Yeah.
Very good point. Excellent point. In the film, you show the cruel reality of British colonialism, how they lived under the Brits. And my question to that is, through discussions with historians and creating this film, why do you think there is only resentment towards Zionists and not equal resentment towards the British who gave away our land in the 1930s?
I think there is resentment. Our grandparents, my grandparents' generation, they've been cursing at the English, since I can remember, like many, many places in the world and many other peoples that were colonized by either the British or the French, but not only. So I think I've grown up with that sort of, sentiment around whether it's a word here, a curse here, or whatever. I think it is there, and at the same time, traveling with the film, trying to find the support for the film, I was so surprised how few people know about the British being in Palestine, and that in 1936, when the film begins, the British have already been there for almost 20 years. It's not new. And so I think that's important. That's an important setup to the film, that the British have already been there. And I want to give a nod in the film that before that was the Ottomans. And the Ottomans are there, and we have a little sense of that in the film. There's a little bit of discussion about land registration and Ottoman land deeds. And the characters of Hanan, played by Hiam Abbas, and her husband, Abu Rabab, you have a sense that also the struggle is not new. Rabab's husband, we understand, she's Mart Shahid, her husband is a Shahid, a martyr. So I think I wanted to give nod to the fact that there's been a resistance and a struggle from before 36.
Okay, so it sounds to me like there's always been this fight for independence, and the Palestinians with resilience, whether it was the Brits or the Ottoman Empire, and now it's currently what's happening now is that, of course, rightfully so, is that we're seeing the Zionists who are inflicting the oppression and cruelty on us. We don't see like the British doing that currently.
Oh,
directly.
Currently? No. Just their governments.
Their governments
are like sending weapons to,
Yeah,
their governments are all involved till today. But yeah, now, it's the Israeli army. It's, bullets and tear gas and all this stuff we find in our homes, in our garden, that made in the United States. I mean, it's written there. I have a collection of bullet kit casings and tear gas, all made in the United States.
That's all made. Yeah, it's not directly. Actually, I would arguably say it is directly. It is very directly.
Yeah, I would agree. But
It's. I think at the end of the day, what a lot of Palestinians, what a lot of people who have humanity just want is for the Palestinians to live in peace. And we don't want to feel resentment towards anybody. I think we just want to be able to go back to our land, to live with dignity and grow up in dignity.
yeah. No, I agree. I think we just want to be left alone.
We just want to be left alone.
Just leave us alone. Leave us to live life and plant and feed and love and do all this. Just leave us alone.
Leave us alone. And something I also loved about this film is you made zero mention of Israel. Israel, did not actually exist in 1936. And I just wanted to ask, was that intentional that you didn't mention the word Israel or the idea of a Israeli state?
So, of course, Israel didn't exist at the time of the film. It's 1936, but I wanted, you feel the undercurrent of what's coming. I very intentionally wanted to talk about and show the fact that there are Jewish refugees fleeing Europe because of persecution, fascism. This is a European created thing. They were committing heinous crimes. And instead of dealing with it, they sent their people away. And so you do see that in the film. You see that in the archives. You do have a sense of that, and the Zionist movement that's growing, and the Zionist movement also that is connected to Europe. Chaim Weizmann, and they were discussing a Jewish state, and then of course coming to the point of the Peel Commission in 1937, where British people decided to partition Palestine. But even before that, with Balfour, there's, we have a mention of Balfour in the film. I mean, it's weaved in there. It's part of the tapestry, I think, of the film, that there are things that are happening, and it might not be directly affecting the villagers at that moment. The particular characters at that moment doesn't, directly affect them, but it's coming. Then there's the thing with the colonies, with the settlements near the village. That could be today.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for sharing that, because you're right. This was a very important part of our history to understand that when Palestine was in 1936, there was a lot of Jewish migrants that were coming in, because as opposed to their countries in Europe dealing with it directly and providing safety for the community, and which should be an obligation to provide safety for everybody.
Yeah.
They just pushed them towards Palestine, and a lot of the Palestinians seeing them were also confused. And I think you showed that in one of the scenes where a child asked, why are these people here?
Yeah.
And
why their countries don't want them.
what? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is also, we have to recognize what Palestine and what Palestine was. It has always been a place, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and it has always been home for many displaced communities. Circassians, Armenians, when they were fleeing genocide, they came to Palestine and they became part of Palestinian society. They became part of our society. And Jews there are indigenous Jews to Palestine. We can't say that there weren't. There were Jews that were in Palestine, and then there were the European Jews who came later. And if it wasn't, the Zionist project was something else. The Zionist Jews could live in Palestine, Circassians, Bosnians, everybody was coming there. It's what we're probably the most, genetically diverse people on earth. But when it became a project, the Zionist project, which was about taking land and displacing a population, that's a whole different discussion.
Whole different thing. And goes back to even our earlier discussion that there were Palestinian Muslims, there were Palestinian Christians, there were Palestinian Jews. And it's not about a religious conflict. It's about a Zionist project. It's really a Zionist conflict.
Yeah.
And if anyone who understands or has read on Zionism, it's I guess I'm trying to be very careful with my words. It's the practice of Zionism and the fact that it's done with land theft and displacing people and ethnically cleansing people. That's why we have an issue with Zionism as a start, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, there was never a time where Jews were not allowed to be in the Holy Land, let's call it. There was never a time where they were like, they could have kept coming. Actually, they could have fled Europe and just lived as everybody else lived. We would be in a very different position today than like when it became a project too. And it was a project of control also for the British to like, these are strategic areas. How do we control them? Things would have been really different.
Things would have been different.
I point the finger at the British a lot. I mean, that's a lot, I think it's important to, and I think the British have recognized their colonial past for the most part, although some of the actors in the film who are British say, no, you don't even learn this stuff in school in any, like, we still don't learn this stuff, so.
We need reparations.
Yeah.
Any British official, you're hearing this podcast?
Yeah.
Let's start somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think the follow-up question is, speaking about the British, you also did a brilliant job in the film showcasing British tourists who have come to Palestine as tourists, and they're playing with the children, and you're showing the humanity. At the same time, you're showing the cruelty of the army. And I wanted to ask, why was that important for you to showcase these two contrasting images?
I don't think things are ever black and white. And I think it's important to talk about systems of power, but not in a black and white way, because, I mean, we know that we live under occupation, that it's not black and white. Mm-mm. That there's, segregation, apartheid. There's also very normal things that happen. It's like the mundaneness of things. And then sometimes it's like where violence really lives, because it's such a mundane thing. And so that was part of it. And also reading a lot about, when the British were in Palestine, they were partying. They were not partying like they were picnicking. They were teaching dance. They were teaching how to make, what do they call this? Like British cakes, tea cakes. They were like diplomats everywhere. There was also the good life, and they liked Palestinians, and they had Jewish friends too. And they were, they were in control. But they were, there's an arrogance to it. There's also something very normal about it, that people also just lived their lives. And what was happening in the city was very different than what was happening in the countryside. The British, let's say the military system, what with Wingate was, in the countryside, and he had what was called the special night squads. It was really, violent. What was happening in the cities was different, and sometimes very bland and normal. And there was real cooperation as well.
It was brilliant about the film, but also disheartening to see.
Yeah.
It's to see the divide and conquer being done in real time.
Yeah.
And seeing how they even played Amir. And I loved Amir's, like the actor at TIFF, when he mentions like never trust a Zionist.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. That's good.
A very powerful statement for sure. So I want to ask you about the takeaways of this film. As the director of this film, what do you hope people will learn, unlearn, or relearn from watching Palestine 36?
What I hope is that Palestinians will watch the film and see themselves, a bit of their people that they know, that we see ourselves in the film. and I don't have messages or learning or whatever. I didn't put cards in the beginning of the film to explain things, but if it piques people's interest to know more about this period, then that's a success. I do that when I watch films. I see something and then I go back home and I start researching about it, the period or the real part of it. So yeah, I just feel like that would be a success, and that it's an important part to know where we are now is to know where we've come from.
Absolutely. And as a Palestinian who watched the film, I can tell you I definitely felt that I saw my grandma, like in one of the characters, Afra.
Yeah.
The little girl's like, because I'm like, oh, that would have been her. And it did definitely pique my interest to learn more about that, because it is part of our history that seems erased, that everyone just starts in 1948, but they don't necessarily know what has happened before that.
Not only that, but the cliche that history is always written by the winners. So this is our history. This is our side of the story.
This is our history.
And it's important to have, our point of view on what happened, which nobody ever listens to. Nobody ever hears our point of view. It's our story.
It is our story. And I feel like watching Palestine36, you both tell a story at the same time you tell a warning in the film. And I'm curious, do you think cinema can act as a way for change in the world?
What's the warning that you hear in the film? You see?
So the warning, at least I gathered from it, is this is what happens when we are divided, when you have people divide us. The other warning was, if we don't stick together, then they're just gonna take over. The other warning I saw was, as it goes again back to this, it's like if you have, they'll always play onto our personal interests and try to elevate, like, okay, we can make you into, like Amir's character, into Amir if you do this.
Yeah.
And in the words of the actor, it's like you should never trust a Zionist.
Yeah.
Did you not see it as a warning?
I mean, I think that what I see is that I feel very much the beauty of our community and the injustice that we have lived in our families, our grandparents, our parents, that generation after generation. It's just a constant circle of violence that we are pulled into, and that we are trying to really just do the most basic thing, which is have the right to be free and to live the way we want to live. And so I think maybe for me, more than a warning, it's that this is who we are, and we have the right to that. We have a right to our dignity, and we have to continue to insist on that and be us, be that.
Absolutely. So, and I love that, because it is really about our existence and about us living peacefully, very much. And now the follow-up to that is, for someone who is not Palestinian, who's watched this film, how do you think this film changes their perspective to seeing what Palestine is right now?
Well, I don't know how a non-Palestinian would feel, but I know that a lot of people can relate to this story, because so many of us come from countries that have been colonized by the British, by the French, by the Portuguese, by the Italians. We come, it's something, and definitely something that Arabs have in common, and that, like, but also the whole world has been dealing with this. So I think it's probably a very familiar story, unfortunately, for a lot of people. And I think, to know it, to know this history helps understand what's happening today, for sure. I mean, we just, like, did this start on October 7th? We know, obviously. It certainly did not start on October 7th. It's been, it started way before that, and way before that, and way before that. Maybe when people watch the film, they will see that.
I agree. It's providing context and historical context uh, to add to that. And what I also loved about what you just mentioned right now is that, of course, you're not going to know what a non-Palestinian may necessarily feel, but anybody who comes from a country that has been colonized will relate to this, because this isn't just, this one area in the world that experienced colonialism. We've seen this happen. Right now, unfortunately, it is an area in the world that we're still seeing the effects of colonialism, just like many different places in the world. And anybody who has come from that background, or anybody in general who can feel a sense of injustice, will feel that sense of injustice watching this movie for sure.
Yeah.
And then the other question I have for you is, as a Palestinian filmmaker, for young Palestinian filmmakers, or for young filmmakers who are listening to this podcast right now, what is a piece of advice you'd like to share with them?
Trust yourself, trust your instinct, and work together, work with other people. No ego. Don't have an ego. There's no room in this work for egos. Do what you know how to do it well. And just, we have to keep pulling each other up. We have to pull that there was a generation in front of me. I recognize that generation. I recognize the road that they paved, especially in cinema, but in the arts in general, and literature, and I relied heavily on those works. So as a teenager, like reading literature, reading those things kept me going. And so I hope that we continue to do that, and I hope, what if I can pull the next generation up, and they'll be better than us, and they'll do more than us, and it just has to be that bar has to keep rising.
I love that. So unity again, working together. You have to start working together, putting ego to the side, and remembering that there was a foundation before us, there's a foundation now, and there's going to be a foundation in the future. So you keep going. We have to keep going, telling our stories. And is there a particular story that you would encourage any filmmaker to explore right now, without giving up stories that you would want to explore?
Well, no, but I think you as small as it is, if it's something you think about and keeps you up, there's nothing that's unimportant. I've just done a film about a huge epic historical moment, but my films before that are, the 3 films before, they're really about small moments. And even this one, even though it's an epic story, it's the smaller moments that are interesting. I think you find what drives you, find what's interesting to you, and it's important. It's important. No one should, if you feel that it's important and you feel that you have to, this is a story you want to tell, there's something that's, ticking at you about it, you follow it.
I really like that. Any story that you keep thinking about, that you're losing sleep thinking about this, you're like, okay, this could be something.
Yeah.
That's an indicator that maybe this is a story to explore. And the last question I have for you, Annemarie, is that we've now watched Palestine 36. We want to support you. We want to support the film. How can people support Palestine 36 today?
That's a good question, because we need the support. It's about asking your cinemas to screen the film, telling them, there's this film I heard about, I want to see it. And, asking the theaters to show the film, asking venues, telling them you want to see the film, putting the word out there. Like we talked about that earlier, there's a block against our voices, and the way that block gets broken is when we ask for it, we look for it, and if people have to go out there and make sure that there is a demand. Sometimes they'll say there's no demand for these kinds of films. Even in the Arab world, when I've tried to release films, it's always, they say, oh well, but Arabs don't want to watch Arab films. That's not true. It's simply not true at all. And they don't want to just watch Hollywood films. And some of us don't want to watch Hollywood films at all. But, it's just, you put those films in front of people and don't give them a choice, that's what they're going to watch. So the audience has got to say what they want.
I really respect that, because I didn't even think about like us being able to actually ask the theater and be like, hey, I saw Palestine 36, or I want to see Palestine 36. Can you please screen it?
Yeah. Enough people do that. They go look for it. Maybe they never heard of it, or they're like, they don't know. So it's like, okay, people are asking for this. They go find it. That's how they program these things.
And it's interesting because in a lot of these interviews, speaking to directors, a lot of directors will be like, go watch it, go stream it. Whereas we're beginning, it's like, make sure that it's actually in theaters, and then encourage everybody to go see it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Annemarie, for coming on Yellow Let's Talk today. This was a wonderful discussion, and I truly am in awe with the film and with everything that you do and everything you stand for. So thank you truly and genuinely very, very much. And is there maybe like a way for people to know more about you, that you can tell the audience where to go if they want to learn more about Annemarie or Palestine 36?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It was a nice talk. Yalla, let's talk. We're on Instagram, Palestine36 Film, Philistine Films, our production company. We're involved in a lot of other films, this film, but also many other films that have come out last year. The Lina Suelem film, Bye Bye Tiberius, many others. The whole idea of the production company is to support our voices and put them out there. But we're nothing without our audience.
I love that. Yeah. So if you guys please show some love, show some support, follow Annemarie, follow Palestine 36, all the work in Philistine films. And if you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot if you can share it with a friend, leave a comment, tell everybody about Palestine 36. And on that note, yalla, bye.